Hi, everyone. I'm Cassy Adams, and I'm the Care Services Director for the ALS Association Oregon and Southwest Washington chapter. And I'm really excited that you're tuning in today for another installment of our live educational events. I'm really thrilled to have Dr. Reva Barewal here with us today. Just a few housekeeping things before I introduce Dr. Barewal. Um, if you are viewing us on Facebook Live today, we would love to hear your comments, questions, and really want this to be an interactive presentation. So we would encourage you to send those into the chat box, and we will be helping to answer those questions live. We would also encourage, if folks are watching on our website, if you do have questions or comments or want to contribute, you can go ahead and send us an email to info@alsoregon.org. We'll do our best to answer all of your questions live, but if there's other questions after the presentation, don't hesitate to reach out to us and we'll do our best to answer those for you. So without further ado, I'm really excited to have a conversation with Dr. Barewal today. And Dr. Reva Barewal is a dentist and a leading expert on dining health for older adults and individuals with disabling conditions. Dr. Barewal has developed innovative food products and services to improve nutrition and dining enjoyment for populations who have difficulty swallowing and chewing. So we're really excited that you're here with us today, Dr. Barewal. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. Thank you very much. Yeah, I'm excited to be here. I think what I'd like to share is some information that I hope will enlighten people's days and are little nuggets that they can tuck away in their kitchen and use when they need to. So I just wanted to preface the conversation and just state, that I am a dentist that specializes in complex needs for patients, but I spent most of my childhood in and out of dental chairs because I was born with a bone growth issue, and it led to problems with chewing. So that was from birth up to the age of about 18. So I decided to become a French culinary chef. So I have a strange background, which I didn't know what to do with until now. And initially, I just felt like I could do more help, more good for people by fixing their teeth than making the food itself. But now I find myself kind of balancing both worlds, and I love it. And I just wanted to state that I'm not an expert on ALS, but I think I can bring you guys a different perspective. And I know a lot about the mouth, and I know a lot about food and about swallowing issues. So I'm so grateful to have this opportunity to share a little bit of what I know with you and to get feedback from your audience too.
Well, we are thrilled that you're joining us, and I think although not a stated ALS expert, you really do bring a lot of insight and really good information to this community. So thank you.
Thank you. So what I was going to just start out is talking a little bit about food itself, because a lot of the origins of this conversation come from science that we have on eating in general. And then we can skew that science, which is meant for just general population, and see how it can bring focus to the needs of the ALS population. And I don't think that has been done before with regards to dining health. And dining health is just like this new cool idea, and it just will open your eyes to what food and dining enjoyment can be. And we know that food is a necessity for survival, right? I mean, it's our fuel, and it gives our body the chance to grow. It allows our cells to multiply and to fully function as a human being. So if food were like the fuel of your car, you would fill up, drive smoothly, and when you're empty, you would fill up again. But the problem is with humans, we don't treat food as fuel, right? Our association is so complex and deeply rooted in tradition and culture and family history. And for many of us, I know for me and my family, it's the way that I show love, right? And it can be creative and just now with COVID, people are baking bread where they never baked bread before. It's like the whole idea of a sourdough starter. I think people have never even experimented with that. And now they're just enjoying this creative expression. So it is like a little incubator of creativity. And it can symbolize the change of seasons. I really think that we recognize foods in different times of our life and tied to religion, which is really important in our beliefs. So in general, it becomes part of our identity. And if you stood behind someone at Starbucks and it's like 10 adjectives before they actually say the word coffee, you know what I mean about identity with foods and beverages. It really becomes part of us. So when you have someone with ALS that has an illness such as that, the problem that I find is that for some reason, food just gets translated to nutrition, right? So we focus on nutrition. And so I wanted to ask the question, why? Why is it always a de-identification of food when we have those conversations in clinic? And it's away from the family story, the familiar story of food. It's kind of stripped away. And it becomes more a question of like dealing with the stress of someone not eating, or dealing with the anxiety or issues associated with maybe choking when they're eating, or the modified textured diet. And we don't want people to lose weight. So it becomes more a function of what is that food doing for the body? But the problem is we don't eat nutrition, we eat food. So that's what I want to talk to you about today, because if we can drive that conversation back to food enjoyment and the dining experience, the desire to eat can be improved, right? So I feel like there's no nutrition in food not eaten. So if we start with that concept, you know, can we make changes to the food, to the environment, because the person has changed? And can we bridge that gap a little bit better with a little bit more knowledge? So that's what dining health is about. It refers to that environment we create to improve the eating experience. It's like where we eat, who we eat with, when we eat, might be equally, according to research, if not more important than determining how much you eat than the food itself. That's like that's a wow moment. So when we're focusing on the environment, we might have a broader view of how to make the food experience enjoyable, not only for the person with ALS, but for the caregiver as well.
I appreciate you bringing that point up, Dr. Barewal, because I think that, you know, in having conversations with a lot of individuals living with ALS and their care team, you know, there's a lot of anxiety and a lot of stress around weight loss and that nutrition piece. What do I need to do to get the calories? And it is very much a focus on nutrition as this kind of separate from food idea. And I like this concept of dining health. I'm curious, just kind of across the board, like how do you see a person's relationship to food kind of shift or change across an illness like ALS, and how do you see them really kind of grappling with this concept?
Yeah, I think that the ideas of reminiscing about the foods that they used to enjoy and trying to figure out how to make, for example, I went to a support group for ALS, and the person was talking to me about their husband and how they didn't enjoy having just supplements all the time, because what supplements were calories and protein, right? And it was getting as much as they could because there was a 10% loss in body weight. And I think that she herself started to realize some of these properties that I'm talking about. She decided to make her own smoothies that had the flavors that her husband really liked and blended them up and gave them to him. So I think that by finding that sweet spot, that thing that will work, and this is all an experiment, right? nothing is the same every day. Every day changes. So in being okay with that and having just a few ideas to share with you and to use, we can start to experiment ourselves and find out what works in that moment. So that was like her spin, was adding the vegetables into this smoothie, and voila, her husband was consuming the smoothies. Like just enjoyed it, just enjoyed it. There was no pushback. And I think that that's powerful, because what that spoke to was the food memory. And I think that that's what I'm trying to say, is the environment is a very much so a memory association. A boost or an ensure or pudding is not a memory association that most people have. So finding those memory associations is a great way to increase food enjoyment.
Great. Yeah, I think that that association and that environmental piece is really important. Kind of to that point, what do you think? What do you think can really help make like the dining experience, or just eating in general, more enjoyable for people? I think, as we were talking about like the differentiation between nutrition and food, and like, just all of the memories and the cultural influences that we talk about with food, how do we just make that more enjoyable for people who do have a modified diet, or who are maybe even have a feeding tube but are eating some for enjoyment? What are your ideas?
The pleasure feeding. Yeah. So I divide this concept into three. I call it setting the stage, picking the moment, and making it social. And I think making it social is my favorite one. So I left that one for the very end. But setting the stage is that idea of creating anticipation. And I wanted to say that I put this all in the handout so that you can look at my 3 tips. If you could just take away 3 things from today, it would be set the stage, pick the moment, and make it social. And if we talk about setting the stage, what I mean is there's literature about how we dine. Okay, so when we go to have our dinner, it doesn't just magically appear on the plate. But sometimes, if you're not involved in going to that grocery store, bringing it home, preparing it, cooking it, and cleaning it, and everyone's like, yeah, I hate that. But
not everybody's favorite part.
Not everyone is a French chef and is like, wow, that's so much fun. But I get that. I totally get that. But what that is it's the food provisioning process. And it's an involvement that you have with the food. And your brain doesn't realize it, but you're creating anticipation. So if someone with ALS can't, if they may not be able to participate in that, it's kind of like, think of it as a wheel. That's what we do. We do that cycle over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. If they can't participate in that cycle, what we can do as caregivers is we can communicate. So we can talk about foods, and we can talk about it before it's being served. So if they are near, proximal to the kitchen, that conversation can happen. And so while all those flavors and smells are wafting over towards you, you can talk about the ingredients, right? You can talk about the foods in season. You can talk about how these foods are being prepared, where they come from. I mean, we're in Oregon. Isn't that like the home of where chickens have names, and we actually know where, like we
what
are
farm?
Yeah, what farm? Did they have friends? And so we really kind of can play that up a little bit, because it involves engagement as part of the process. And there's actual studies on this, that if there is good communication, what I mean by good, I mean positive communication about the food, then when the person receives that food, their rating of that food is higher. So whether it's puree, minced moist, or regular meals, It will be higher if you talked it up. So talk it up. You know, it's really a great idea. And it just broke my heart once when I was in a nursing home and this nurse's aide was giving pureed meal to somebody and she just kind of like, here you go. And it was for that person, it's like, wait, you're rejecting the food and you want me to eat it? So they wouldn't eat their food. And it's like, why aren't they eating their food? Well, that emotional interaction led to them not eating the food before they even tried it. So that's just an exaggerating example, but I'm just trying to share that those things do happen.
Well, and what a good point too, that if, you know, if, which we do, I think naturally, we talk about food before we eat it. We engage about that. If there's a restaurant that a person and their partner really want to go to, you usually talk about it. Like, whoa, what are you thinking about ordering? I'm looking at the menu ahead of time. Food can be such a social piece. So it makes a lot of sense to have that same level of engagement.
Yeah. And you know what I was just going to mention to you? Have you ever gone to get a pizza and you go and you order it and you're like excited? You're totally excited. You're talking and then you have your slice of pizza and that's the best moment. After that, it's downhill because it was the anticipation.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. It's that anticipation, that food memory that gets your brain going so that you are like, you've got this heightened expectation of an experience. So that's, yeah, I just want to mention that. But you know, it's really important with ALS that the five senses are strong and they are easy to capitalize on those senses to improve the food experience. And what I mean is like their sight, hearing, smell, taste, touch, it's all there. So how do we capitalize on that to make that experience, if it is a modified texture diet, if they do have bulbar weakness, and that is something that may happen, is that they have dysphagia or difficulty swallowing, there are things that we can capitalize on to improve their experience. So what we know from food sensory experts is appearance is the number one driver for why we put food in our mouth, right? So you have something that's modified texture. Here's that challenge for the home chef. Like, how do I make that food more enjoyable? And I think that we have to understand that color plays a big part in it. If you puree up chicken or beef or whatever, the color is not appealing. To offset that color, you can introduce bright sauces. And I wouldn't put the sauces on top of the meat. I would put the sauces on the side, because when a spoon goes towards things and things get mixed up, you lose that definition. So can we keep that definition on the plate a little bit longer? Can we have vegetables that are bright and inviting and positive in color? You know, depth is a big thing that we probably don't realize, but if you have food that's, you know, a piece of chicken or a hamburger, that's vertical height. And when you have puree or modified texture, you lose volume, you lose that vertical height, and that's really tough. A trick is to use a piping bag, your icing piping bag, and pipe out your mashed potatoes, get some more vertical height. And honestly, depth is with, like, if you chop up parsley really fine. And I was talking to a nurse, Nancy, yesterday, in ALS. She has a lot of experience with ALS, and she's like, wow, you know, I never chopped parsley. I don't think I've ever done that my entire life. And I had to bring myself back. Like, this is something new, maybe for the caregiver. But what it does is it creates like depth, right? You have a different green color parsley on top of something, and it's more appealing. That's why we do it in the food world. So that's, you know, and then the taste and texture. Honestly, it can be a real challenge, but if you have opposing flavors on the plate together, so sweet and savory, that kind of thing, a little bit of sour, you don't want to go overboard, but just flavor differences. That's why sweet and sour chicken is so popular, things like that. That makes things more appealing. And when you have puree or modified texture, you lose flavor. And that's the biggest challenge, is to gain back that flavor. So try to add herbs or seasonings, or use stocks like bone broths and things like that to amp up the flavor. Citrus juices work really well, and salts work well as well. And one other thing I want to mention is the temperature of the food is really important. Did you know that swallowing is easier when food is either hot or cold, but harder when it's lukewarm? So it's really a question of, understanding that carbonated beverages are easier to swallow.
Oh, interesting.
So yeah, so there's some stuff there. Smell is super important. I mean, very, very much so memory association. If you can think of the smells that you like, spaghetti sauce, right? Smells great. Well, if the person with ALS can be close to the kitchen and smelling those, they're creating, it's called the pre-preparatory phase of eating, right? So they're getting ready for the food. And so if they have, great, I put that to you, and maybe in the chat box, people can say, what are the smells that they really like that warms the heart, and brings back those positive food memories.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I'd be really curious to hear if folks want to contribute that. While we wait for some things to come in, I can definitely say mine is chocolate chip cookies, and that smell that just wafts throughout the entire home. While we give people a minute to respond to your question, I'm really curious, because I think you're talking a lot about like appetite, right? And that part of that appetite process is smelling the food, is really getting prepared for eating something. I think this is an issue that I hear a lot come up for families and individuals with ALS, talking about just a shift in their appetite, or eating becomes a chore because it's so fatiguing. And that, I think you're really hitting on the head what people are trying to get at when they're talking about that, and trying to find some ways to increase that appetite. I did want to just also make note that Tom Jones, who's watching, he mentioned a comment about just some accommodations that he's made to enjoy food a little bit more. And he said back when restaurants used to be open for dining in Washington State, he would bring in a straw just in case, so that he could much more easily be able to eat food. So I'm wondering too, if you might be able to speak a little bit to some of the accommodations that might make the eating process easier for folks.
Yeah, so I kind of, in putting this together, I know that there's adaptive equipment that's out there that people can use. And that is more of an occupational therapy spin on it. And I can only talk briefly about, keeping the table a little bit higher for you, or could you put something down on the table first if proximity to the mouth needs to be better, if there's a chair adaptation that you can do in that regard. But, when it comes to the idea of having a reduced appetite, people automatically think, well, they're just not hungry. And it's true, but the question is the why are they not hungry? And that's the part that is more difficult to understand, because you can come up with a quick answer, but it's very complex, in my opinion. And I think variety is a big thing that changes when you're on a modified texture diet. We don't know, those words that you have when you're first a little baby, and then it skyrockets to like, I don't know, it goes from like 10 words to, when they're a little bit older, we're in the thousands, and then you're off to the races. And that idea of expansive amounts of foods that you eat on a regular diet to more limitation on a modified texture diet, I think that can play a game with your head as far as whether you want to eat. And a lot of my focus is on picking the moment. I think I mentioned that to you before, making, where are they right now? Can we can we look at the time of day, and eating smaller meals might be better, because if you can understand eating when you're tired, you're not going to want to eat. So can we reserve softer foods, or less chewing required for those moments? Can we just have something ready made that's shelf stable in the pantry for those moments? Can we plate our food so that it doesn't look so big on the plate? Can we just provide enough so that it's a win? It's a win because they finished what was on their plate and it was manageable for where they were in that moment. And I think that that's like, a real big piece of understanding a slower eater, and what the issues are, and making every piece of food count. So empty calories should be out the window if possible, and just trying to say small meals, make them nutritionally dense, and perception of ethnicity comes into variety. And I think if we had more time, I would talk a little bit more about that, because even Italian food, as like ethnic food, how can we make it more fun for them, more engaging? Even the tablecloth or the music can really help. It doesn't always have to be the food itself, to create variety.
Yeah, no, that I love that. I think about, of course, in our climate right now with COVID-19, so many people are not able to go out and enjoy some of the wonderful restaurants that they've enjoyed. And I think if there's a way that we can bring some of that ambiance and like the environment that you were talking about into our own homes and lives, ALS or no ALS, I think most people probably enjoy that. And it sounds like that does really impact appetite.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to see what people think about, what they could do in their home to create a little bit of variety with the foods. I mean, seasonal variety is huge, right? But it's also ethnic variety. I mean, just trying to make variety is a spice of life. So how do we kind of make that still occur? Making it social was my last thing I wanted to mention, because there's a lot of research that's burgeoning right now in the idea of visual modeling. So if you're sitting across from me and you're eating the same food and drinking the same food that I am, I'm more likely to eat my food. So I'm more likely to finish everything on my plate if there's someone else with me. So if they've done studies where the person is across from the individual, but they're not eating, it doesn't have an impact. It's the idea of mimicry, which you don't even know you're doing it, and you're mimicking that person across from you. Has anyone ever yawned in front of you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Immediate. It's like you keep catching it back and forth.
Yeah. That's exactly it. That's visual modeling. And in light of COVID, if you even had a laptop at your dinner table and you had family members that were eating similar foods at the time, then it creates that idea of socialization with an individual. And the decision could be, am I going to eat now or am I going to talk? But that idea of making it social is really, really critical. And music, honestly, if your house is super quiet, putting a little low music, very soft music, favorite music is great. Like pick your favorite music that brings back fond memories, throw that on. It changes the flavor, pardon the pun, of the dining environment.
Yeah. While you were talking, we've had a couple of comments and a question come in. So Jan Steinbach says, when my husband couldn't hold a fork easily, he used a fondue fork. The sharp prongs grabbed and held the food better than a regular fork. Plus, there is no right side up, so no need to twist the wrist. Love that. The fondue fork was longer, so he could brace his elbow while lifting food to his mouth. And then a cork shielded the pointy end when we ate away from home. Oh, perfect. You throw it in your purse and you don't stab yourself. That's good. So Jan asks a question there. She says, what are some good strategies for sharing meals in restaurants or at home with friends, or having, a get together when the person with ALS is taking all of their food via the feeding tube? are there some ways or thoughts on making that feel comfortable for everyone?
Yeah, so I don't know if that individual is able to have any pleasure feedings at that time. So I wonder if oftentimes it's difficult, right, to the timing of it, picking the right moment. So I think that the idea of eating or getting the nutrition or feeling satiated before the social event is a possibility. So having feedings before the social event so that you can focus your energy on the social aspect and you're not kind of toggling between both worlds can be helpful. And if I'm reading that conversation, is it really about the social interaction at that time, or is it, you know, is it the emotion coming from the other people, or is it the emotion coming from the person with ALS? I'm not sure.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure, but I think I'm kind of reading this as, you know, if there is a gathering and really the gathering is focused on the social aspect, but there's also that food involved. You know, you brought up the pleasure eating
Right.
piece. And I wonder, you know, if there's an opportunity for people to, you know, work with their dietitian on also kind of figuring out those nuances, whether that's an opportunity for people, you know.
Right.
Um,
Yes, I think that that would be fantastic to talk to an SLP about that, because there are, I mean, the focus of my research is on transitional foods, which are just true meltable crackers that can go into a purse or a bag. And what I've heard is that those kind of foods are great for pleasure feedings when you are on tube feeding. So it just provides that what you're looking for when you're out and about is something that's portable that can actually provide that social piece of eating, but not be the focus of getting all the nutrition. So that's why I was saying if we can get the majority of the nutrition before the event, so the person with ALS can focus on the event itself, and food is an adjunct. So could we just have something light and easy to consume in a pleasure feeding mode?
yeah, and I think that's what Jan was getting at. She messaged back in and she said enhancing and not distracting from the social aspect.
Right.
So
You know, and it's like you want to decide, probably make decisions before you go. Like, what is the end game of that social event? Like, energy is a big part of it, right? So is the energy focus on the meeting those people, that interaction piece? And is the food just adjunctive, or is the food the primary? Is it Thanksgiving dinner? You know, is food the primary idea? And trying to figure that out beforehand, making some decisions beforehand are probably pretty helpful.
yeah, it's definitely a nuanced conversation. And my goodness, Dr. Barwell, I just looked down at the time, and I think you and I could just go on for
Yeah.
a long time. But in the effort of time, I do, and I neglected to say this before. My apologies, but Dr. Barwell put together a really, really nice handout with a lot of what she's been talking about today that is available if you're watching on Facebook or on our website. It's available for you right there. And I have a copy and I'm happy to share it with anybody else. Also, you've got some really great information on your website as well.
Yeah, I do. And that's on the handout as well. And I think you have that probably somewhere. The website's savories.com.
Yes, and I believe we should have that in our link, and if not, we'll make sure that it's there.
Yes. And
Perfect.
this conversation could go on for a while. You're absolutely right. And it was thank you so much for inviting me to talk and share a little bit, and hopefully make someone's dining experience a little bit more fun and enjoyable.
Well, I certainly appreciated having you on, Dr. Barwell, and I think it's really a topic that that you know maybe we can continue down the road because I think it's so relevant to just people, and we like food, so it's
Right.
useful to talk about. So thank you
Right.
so much. Really
Thank you.
appreciate it. All right, thanks everybody for tuning in. If you are able to join us for our next live event, we will be doing this again on June 11th from 3 to 3:30. And we are going to be talking about building a care community. We'll have one of our own care coordinators, Mary Rebar, joining us with a family caregiver, Joyce Meyer, to talk about that. So hope to see you then. All right, thanks everyone.